This is PMSR. Probably my superpower is romance, and today we're diving into 4 wedding horror stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about trusting your instincts. These stories come from real people who ignored every red flag screaming at them to run. And what happened next destroyed everything they thought they knew about love. From cheating exposed at the altar to revenge served ice cold at the reception. These are the moments when I do became I'm done. Let's start with a story that proves sometimes the worst person at your wedding isn't a guest, it's the person you're marrying. Part 1. The Best Man's Confession. Sarah met Marcus at a charity gala 3 years before their wedding day. He was charismatic, successful, and treated her like absolute royalty. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and Sarah felt like she'd won the relationship lottery. Her friends adored him, her family loved him, even her notoriously judgmental mother called him the one. But there was something Sarah's gut kept whispering to her, something she couldn't quite name. Marcus was protective, maybe a little too protective. He didn't like when she went out without him. He'd check her phone just to make sure she was safe. He always needed to know where she was, who she was with, what time she'd be home. Sarah told herself this was love. This was a man who cared so much he couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to her. Her friends said she was lucky to have someone so devoted. The wedding planning was intense. Marcus had opinions about everything, the guest list, the flowers, even which friends Sarah could choose as bridesmaids. He vetoed 3 of her closest friends, calling them bad influences and drama magnets. Sarah felt uncomfortable, but convinced herself he just wanted their special day to be perfect. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus's best man, Jake, asked to meet Sarah for coffee. She almost said no, Marcus wouldn't like it, but something made her agree. Jake looked nervous, kept starting sentences and stopping. Finally, he just said it. "Sarah, I need to tell you something about Marcus, and you're going to hate me for it, but I can't let you marry him without knowing this." Sarah's stomach dropped. She already knew. Some part of her had always known. Jake explained that Marcus had another girlfriend. Not an ex, a current girlfriend named Emma, who had no idea Sarah existed. Marcus had been seeing Emma for 2 years, the entire time he had been engaged to Sarah. He told Emma he traveled for work. He told Sarah he had a demanding job that required late nights and weekend conferences. The worst part? Emma was pregnant, 4 months pregnant, and Marcus had no intention of leaving either woman. Sarah felt like the floor had opened beneath her. Every excuse, every late night, every time her gut had screamed at her and she'd silenced it with, "But he loves me." It all made horrible, perfect sense. She asked Jake why he was telling her now. He said he'd been struggling with it for months, but seeing Sarah so happy at the rehearsal dinner preparations broke something in him. He couldn't let Marcus destroy another person's life. Sarah made a decision in that coffee shop. She wasn't going to cancel the wedding. She was going to let Marcus stand up there in front of everyone and promise to love, honor, and cherish her, and then she was going to tell everyone exactly who he really was. Wedding day arrived. Sarah played her part perfectly, got her hair done, smiled for photos, let her bridesmaids gush about how lucky she was. Marcus had no idea what was coming. The ceremony was beautiful. Marcus recited his vows with tears in his eyes, talking about how Sarah was his soulmate, his forever, the only woman he'd ever truly loved. The crowd sighed with emotion. Then it was Sarah's turn. She smiled at Marcus, took a breath, and said, "Before I say my vows, I need to share something with everyone here today. Marcus, you told me you were my one and only. You told me you'd never lied to me. You made me feel crazy for questioning you, for feeling like something was wrong." Marcus's face went white. The church went silent. But my gut was right. My gut has always been right. You have another girlfriend named Emma. She's pregnant with your child. You've been living a double life for 2 years, and you thought you could stand here and lie to my face in front of everyone I love." The gasps rippled through the church. Marcus tried to grab her hand, started stammering excuses, but Sarah stepped back. "So here are my real vows, Marcus. I vow to never ignore my intuition again. I vow to never let someone make me feel crazy for trusting my gut. And I vow to never, ever waste another second on someone who sees me as an option instead of a priority." She turned to the shocked crowd. "There's food and an open bar at the reception venue. I've already paid for everything, so please go celebrate the fact that I just dodged the biggest bullet of my life. The party starts in an hour." Then Sarah walked out of that church, still in her wedding dress, and never looked back. The aftermath was messy. Marcus tried everything, begging, crying, sending flowers, claiming Jake had lied. But Sarah had already contacted Emma, and Emma had receipts. Text messages, photos, ultrasound pictures Marcus had pretended to be excited about. Emma left Marcus too. Sarah and Emma actually became friends, bonded over their shared experience of being manipulated by the same man. Emma named Sarah the baby's godmother. Marcus lost his job when his company found out about the double life. Turns out those work conferences were actually just lies he had told both women. His reputation in their social circle was destroyed. Last Sarah heard, he was dating someone new and complaining about how women always overreact. Sarah? She's engaged again to someone who makes her feel safe without making her feel controlled. Someone who celebrates her independence instead of trying to manage it. And most importantly, someone's story her gut believes from the beginning. The lesson here? Your intuition isn't crazy. When something feels off, there's usually a reason. The red flags Sarah ignored, the controlling behavior, the isolation from friends, the constant need to know her whereabouts, those weren't love. They were control tactics from someone who knew he was living a lie. At PMSR, we talk about romantic intelligence, the superpower of recognizing patterns before they destroy you. Sarah's gut was screaming at her for 3 years. She just needed permission to listen to it. If this story resonated with you, you're already building your RQ. Subscribe to PMSR for more real relationship stories that train your instincts. Part 2. The objection that wasn't a joke. David and Jennifer had been together for 5 years. High school sweethearts who'd weathered college long distance, career changes, and all the normal relationship challenges. Everyone assumed they'd end up married eventually. When David finally proposed, their families treated it like the natural conclusion to a story everyone had been following. The wedding planning was smooth. Almost too smooth. Jennifer was easygoing, David was supportive, and their families got along great. The only weird thing was David's older brother, Ryan. Ryan had always been the wild card in the family, the guy who made inappropriate jokes at family dinners, who showed up drunk to Christmas, who borrowed money and never paid it back. David loved his brother, but knew Ryan's track record with relationships was a disaster. 3 engagements, 0 marriages, and a trail of angry ex-girlfriends. 2 months before the wedding, Ryan started acting strange around Jennifer. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but David noticed lingering looks, inside jokes that didn't include David, texts between Ryan and Jennifer that Jennifer laughed at but wouldn't fully explain. When David asked about it, Jennifer said Ryan was just being friendly, trying to bond with his future sister-in-law. David's gut said something else, but he didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, controlling fiancé who couldn't handle his brother being nice to his partner. The wedding day arrived without incident. Ceremony at a beautiful vineyard, perfect weather, 200 guests. Everything was going exactly as planned. The officiant reached the part everyone jokes about, but nobody expects to be real. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace. Ryan stood up. At first, people laughed. This had to be a joke, right? Ryan was known for his pranks. He was probably going to make some funny toast about how David was too good for Jennifer or something. But Ryan wasn't laughing. "I have something to say," Ryan announced, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter. "David, I'm sorry, but I can't let you do this without knowing the truth." David felt his entire world tilt. Jennifer's face went pale. "Jennifer and I have been sleeping together for the past 8 months. It started as a stupid, drunken mistake at your engagement party, and it became something neither of us could stop. I'm in love with her, she's in love with me, and you deserve to know before you marry someone who's been lying to you for almost a year." The silence that followed was deafening. David stood frozen at the altar, his brain unable to process what he just heard. Jennifer started crying, but she didn't deny it. That's when David knew it was true. "Is this real?" David asked Jennifer, his voice barely a whisper. Jennifer looked at Ryan, then back at David. "I didn't know how to tell you. We tried to stop. We really tried. But every time we were together, it just happened." David felt like he was watching this happen to someone else. His brother, his fiancé. 8 months of lies, all while he'd been planning their future, ignoring the sick feeling in his gut every time he saw them together. So the weird jokes, the texts, the way you two acted at family dinners, that was all real? And I told myself I was being paranoid? Ryan stepped forward, like he thought he could somehow fix this. "David, man, I never meant for this to happen, I swear." David laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "You never meant for this to happen? For 8 months? That's not a mistake, Ryan. That's a choice. 8 months of choices." He turned to the stunned crowd, still in shock, but knowing he had to say something. "I apologize for the drama, everyone. There's going to be food and an open bar at the reception, and I've paid for all of it. So please don't let this disaster go to waste. Eat, drink, celebrate the fact that I found out now instead of after signing legal documents." Then David walked out, leaving Jennifer in her wedding dress and Ryan standing there like the coward he was. The aftermath was nuclear. David's family disowned Ryan immediately. His mother didn't speak to Ryan for 2 years. His father told Ryan he was no longer welcome at family events. Jennifer tried to contact David multiple times, sending long apologetic texts about how confused she had been, how she had made a terrible mistake. But here's the thing David realized in therapy afterwards. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a series of choices over 8 months. Every time she kissed Ryan, every time she lied to David about where she was, every time she looked David in the eye and said, "I love you," while carrying on an affair with his brother. Those weren't mistakes. They were betrayals. The worst part? Ryan and Jennifer didn't even end up together. They dated for 3 months after the wedding disaster, then broke up because, surprise, their entire relationship was built on lies and adrenaline. Without the secrecy and the forbidden excitement, they had nothing. David is doing better now. He's dating someone new who actually respects him, and he's learned to trust his intuition. Looking back, he realizes there were dozens of red flags. The way Jennifer and Ryan made excuses to spend time alone, the way Jennifer defended Ryan when David's family criticized his behavior, the way she'd come home from family dinners with a guilty look on her face. David ignored every single warning sign because he didn't want to believe the worst about the people he loved most. The lesson? Sometimes the person who seems paranoid is actually paying attention. David's gut was screaming at him for months, but he silenced it because he thought trust meant ignoring red flags. Real trust is built on transparency, not blind faith. If you caught those red flags before David did, your romantic intelligence is already sharp. Subscribe to PMSR for more stories that train your instincts to protect you before the damage is done. Part 3. The Bride's Revenge. Nicole should have called off her wedding to Brandon 3 times before the actual day. First time, when she found flirty text messages with his work friend, Hannah, 6 months before the wedding. Brandon said it was harmless, that Nicole was overreacting, that Hannah was just friendly like that with everyone. Nicole wanted to believe him. Second time, when Brandon's credit card statement showed expensive jewelry purchases Nicole never received. He said it was a surprise for their wedding day. It wasn't. It was for Hannah. third time, when Brandon stayed out until 4 a.m. at his bachelor party and came home with hickeys on his neck. He blamed it on drunk friends being stupid. Nicole's gut said otherwise, but the wedding was in 2 weeks. Canceling felt impossible. So Nicole did what a lot of people do when they know the truth but aren't ready to face it. She started investigating. She created a fake Instagram account and followed Hannah. She paid attention to when Brandon said he was working late and checked Hannah's location tags. She became a detective in her own relationship, gathering evidence for a case she didn't want to win. 1 week before the wedding, Nicole had her smoking gun. Brandon posted on Instagram that he was at a work dinner with the team. Hannah posted from the same restaurant at the same time a romantic photo of champagne and oysters with the caption, "Perfect date night." Nicole's heart shattered and hardened simultaneously. She had the proof, she had the timeline, she had screenshots of everything. Most people would call off the wedding. Nicole had a better idea. She let Brandon think everything was fine. She smiled through the rehearsal dinner, laughed at his sweet toast about how lucky he was to marry his best friend. She let him think he'd gotten away with it all. The wedding day was beautiful. Nicole looked stunning. Brandon couldn't stop telling her how much he loved her, how excited he was to start their lives together. If he felt any guilt, it didn't show. The ceremony went off without a hitch. They exchanged vows, kissed, walked down the aisle as husband and wife. Photos with family, cocktail hour with guests, everything perfect. Then came the reception. Nicole had planned every detail of this reception months ago, but she'd made one last-minute change to the schedule. Instead of the traditional first dance, she was going to give a speech. She stood up, tapped her glass, smiled at the crowd of 250 people. Brandon looked at her with such love and adoration. He had no idea what was coming. Thank you all for being here to celebrate our love. Brandon and I have been through so much together, and I'm grateful for every lesson our relationship has taught me. People smiled, raised glasses. Brandon beamed. I've learned so much about trust, about honesty, about what happens when you love someone more than they love themselves, about what happens when you ignore red flags because you're afraid of being alone. Brandon's smile faltered slightly. So before we continue celebrating, I want to share something with all of you. I want you to see what I discovered about the man I just married. Nicole pulled out her phone and connected it to the reception's projection screen. Up came the text messages, the Instagram posts, the jewelry receipts, the timeline of lies. This is Hannah, Brandon's work coworker, the woman he's been sleeping with for the past 8 months, the woman he bought a diamond necklace while telling me we needed to budget for our honeymoon. The room erupted. Gasps, angry shouts, people pulling out their phones to film. Brandon's face went from confused to horrified to furious in seconds. Nicole, what the hell are you doing? Brandon hissed, trying to grab the phone. I'm exposing the truth, Nicole said calmly. You made me look like a fool for 8 months. You lied to my face every single day. You stood up there an hour ago and promised to be faithful. So I'm keeping my promise to never let you get away with this. She turned to the crowd. The bar is open, the food is paid for, and I'm about to be divorced before I'm even technically married. Enjoy the party, everyone. I know I will. Brandon tried to argue, tried to claim Nicole was crazy, tried to say she'd misunderstood everything. But the evidence was on a 10-foot screen for everyone to see. His parents were horrified. His groomsmen looked at him with disgust. Even his own brother said, "Dude, what the hell is wrong with you?" Hannah, it turned out, was at the wedding. Brandon had insisted on inviting her as his work friend. She'd been sitting at a table in the back, watching the whole thing unfold. When Nicole's evidence went up on screen, Hannah ran out crying. Nicole filed for annulment the next week. The marriage was dissolved before they even got back photos from the photographer. Brandon tried to keep the wedding gifts, claiming they were rightfully his. Nicole's lawyer laughed him out of court. The best part? Nicole had made sure every guest knew the truth before any of them left. She had handed out USB drives with all the evidence as wedding favors, labeled "The Real Story." Brandon couldn't gaslight anyone, couldn't claim Nicole was jealous or crazy. The proof was undeniable. Brandon lost his job when his company found out he'd been lying about work dinners to cover affairs. Hannah quit to avoid the humiliation. Brandon's friends stopped talking to him. His reputation was destroyed. Nicole, she took the honeymoon trip solo, posted gorgeous photos with the caption, "Celebrating my freedom and my self-worth." She met someone new on that trip, actually, someone who appreciated her intelligence and her strength. They've been together for 2 years now, and her gut has never once questioned him. The lesson here isn't that revenge is always the answer. The lesson is boundaries. Nicole spent 8 months letting Brandon disrespect her, gaslight her, treat her like she was stupid. She swallowed her intuition, her anger, her self-respect, all because she thought love meant giving people endless chances. But at PMSR, we believe in romantic intelligence, knowing when to walk away and when to make sure everyone knows why you walked away. Nicole's story proves that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be quiet about your truth. If this story made you want to stand up and cheer, you're recognizing what boundaries actually look like. Subscribe to PMSR for more stories where people take their power back. Part 4. The Secret That Destroyed Two Families. Melissa and Christopher had the kind of engagement story people make movies about. They'd met through mutual friends, bonded over their complicated family dynamics, and fallen in love fast. Both came from big families with lots of drama. Melissa had 4 siblings, and Christopher had 3, so they understood each other's chaos. The wedding planning brought their families together constantly. Joint dinners, shared planning meetings, the families becoming friends. Melissa's mother and Christopher's mother even started a book club together. It felt like everyone was gaining a new family, not just the bride and groom. But 3 weeks before the wedding, Melissa's younger sister, Emma, pulled her aside at the bridal shower. Emma looked scared, like she'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "Mel, I need to tell you something, and I don't know if I should tell you before the wedding or after, but I can't hold it anymore." Melissa's stomach dropped. "Emma, what's wrong?" Emma took a shaky breath. "I did one of those ancestry DNA tests for fun last month. You know, the one that shows your genetic matches and relatives." "Okay." Melissa wasn't sure where this was going. "Christopher showed up as my half-brother." The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Melissa laughed, thinking Emma must be joking or confused. "That's impossible. Our families don't know each other. We grew up in different states." Emma pulled out her phone, showed Melissa the DNA results. Right there, clear as day. Christopher Matthews, half-sibling, 25% shared DNA. Melissa felt the room spin. This had to be wrong. Some kind of database error. But even as she thought it, pieces started clicking into place. The weird way her dad had reacted when she first brought Christopher home, the way Christopher's mom had seemed oddly emotional at their engagement party. "We need to figure this out before the wedding," Melissa said, her voice shaking. "There has to be an explanation." They called an emergency family meeting. Melissa, Emma, their parents, Christopher, and his mother. Everyone confused, everyone worried. Melissa laid out the DNA results. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Melissa's father spoke. "I need to tell you something I should have told you 20 years ago." Melissa's world was about to shatter in ways she couldn't have imagined. Her father explained that in his early 20s, before he met Melissa's mother, he'd had a brief relationship with a woman named Patricia. Patricia gotten pregnant. They discussed options, and Patricia decided she wanted to raise the child alone. She didn't want child support, didn't want involvement. She just wanted to move on with her life. Her father agreed, signed away his parental rights, and never looked back. He met Melissa's mother a year later, started a family, and buried that part of his past so deep he almost convinced himself it hadn't happened. Christopher's mother, Patricia, sat frozen during this confession. She'd never told Christopher about his biological father. She'd raised him believing his father was dead, a story that seemed kinder than the truth. Christopher and Melissa sat there, holding hands, realizing they'd fallen in love with their half-sibling, This can't be real, Christopher whispered. We're getting married in 3 weeks. We've been together for 2 years. We're in love. But the DNA didn't lie. They were half-siblings. The wedding couldn't happen. Not legally, not morally, not without destroying both families. The aftermath was catastrophic. The wedding was canceled immediately. Guests were notified, deposits were lost, but none of that mattered compared to the emotional devastation. Melissa and Christopher tried to process what had happened. They'd shared intimate moments, planned a future, talked about having children together, all while being related by blood. The guilt and confusion were overwhelming. Christopher was furious at his mother for lying about his father. Melissa was furious at her father for hiding his past. Both families were torn apart by secrets that had been buried for decades. The worst part, Melissa and Christopher genuinely loved each other. Their feelings didn't magically disappear just because of biology. They had to actively grieve the relationship, go to therapy, work through the trauma of losing not just a partner, but the entire future they'd imagined. They cut off all contact. It was the only way to move forward. Seeing each other, even as family, was too painful. Melissa's father and Christopher's mother tried to build some kind of co-parenting relationship, even though Christopher was an adult. But Christopher wanted nothing to do with his biological father. The man who'd abandoned him, then unknowingly almost let him marry his own daughter? Years later, both Melissa and Christopher are in different relationships. They've both done extensive therapy. Melissa's engaged again to someone whose family tree she thoroughly investigated before getting serious. She jokes about it, but the trauma is real. Christopher is single, struggling to trust anyone or anything after having his entire life revealed as a lie. The lesson from this nightmare? Secrets don't stay buried. They metastasize. They grow. They wait for the worst possible moment to destroy everything in their path. Melissa's father thought he was protecting his family by keeping his past hidden. Instead, he nearly caused his daughter to unknowingly marry her half-brother. Christopher's mother thought she was protecting her son by lying about his father. Instead, she let him fall in love with someone he could never be with. At PMSR, we talk about romantic intelligence as knowing yourself, your patterns, and your truth. But this story proves that RQ also means demanding honesty from the people who raised you. Your family's secrets can become your trauma. If this story made you uncomfortable for all the right reasons, you're recognizing why transparency matters, even when the truth is painful. Subscribe to PMSR for more stories that prove why honesty, no matter how hard, is always better than lies. 4 weddings, 4 disasters, 4 lessons in trusting your gut. Sarah ignored the controlling behavior until she couldn't anymore. David silenced his intuition about his brother and fiancé until it was too late. Nicole gathered evidence while her gut screamed the truth. And Melissa and Christopher fell victim to secrets they never saw coming. At PMSR, we believe your romantic intelligence, your ability to read patterns, trust intuition, and enforce boundaries is your greatest superpower. These 4 stories prove that when something feels off, there's usually a reason. When your gut screams at you, listen. When red flags appear, don't paint them green. Every story you hear on this channel is a training simulation for your real life. The more patterns you recognize, the better you get at protecting yourself before the damage is done. This is part 1 of our Wedding Horror Story series. Part 2 drops next week with 4 more disasters, including a groom who disappeared during the reception and a bride who found out her entire relationship was built on catfishing. You won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Drop a comment telling us which story shocked you most, or share your own wedding horror story. We read every comment and might feature yours in a future video. Remember, your gut is always right. Your intuition is your superpower. And at PMSR, we're here to help you build your romantic intelligence one story at a time. See you in part 2.